During its heyday, BioWare used to be a force to be reckoned with. If that line sounds familiar at all to you, it's because we started off our previous Mass Effect video just like that. And we also ended that video with saying BioWare doesn't hold up anymore, unlike some of their classic games. There's no real need to repeat ourselves, but with BioWare's track record over the years, it really feels like the only thing a BioWare fan can do now is remember the good old days. When I heard that the pioneer of narrative-driven RPGs wanted to put their focus mostly on gameplay with Anthem, I was really at a loss for words, and we see how well that turned out. I say that all a little bit reluctantly, because I don't usually like to come across as wearing only rose-tinted glasses, but I do really miss old BioWare. Nowadays, the Canadian developer entertains people for all the wrong reasons. I don't want to insinuate they cannot produce good games anymore, but for almost a decade now, their games have been bad, prone to controversy, or okayish at best. Their last game, which was both great and free of controversy at the same time, might have been Mass Effect 2. And since we've taken a look at the first game, we want to continue with the rest of the trilogy. So we transferred our save file and worked on our pronunciation just to find out how well the game holds up today. So let's get right into it. Mass Effect 2 was released in 2010 and follows up on the events of the previous game. You continue the journey of Alliance Commander, first human Spectre, Super Seducer, and now hero of the Citadel, Commander Shepard. I wonder what Shepard's business cards look like. Anyways, 3 months after the fall of the Sovereign and the victory over Saren, the Commander is sent out to deal with the aftermath of the Geth invasion, only to be ambushed by the Collectors, an alien race of the Terminus system many believe to be a myth. Taken by surprise and seriously outgunned, the Normandy stands no chance against the enemy's huge dreadnought, and Shepard sees no other option but to abandon his own ship. While the crew tries to run to the escape pods, Shepard makes sure to get everyone to safety. You briefly get to control your character as you walk through the floating wreckage and look up into empty space while the ship you spend an entire game on gets completely obliterated. Despite the hero's best efforts, not everyone makes it out alive. And that includes our hero Shepard. At the end of the opening sequence, Shepard gets blown out of his ship, and as he begins to struggle for air, his body turns limp. The music kicks in, and you can see the dead commander vanish into the planet's atmosphere. To this day, this intro remains one of my all-time favorites in video game history, and I can't imagine how BioWare could have made it more powerful. In less than 10 minutes, they managed to set the tone for the whole game and immediately create personal stakes. It's also worth noting how threatening the Collectors appear to be. They have been on screen once and effortlessly took out the main character and his ship. What a way to introduce your antagonist. Anyway, as one might expect, Shepard is not dead forever. I mean, he's on the cover of the game, so, you know, he gotta be alive for a good majority of the game. 2 years after the ambush, Shepard finds himself resurrected at the mercy of Cerberus, a human extremist organization whose agenda is it to further humanity, and actually a former enemy of the human Spectre. Shepard finds out that the so-called head of Cerberus, the Elusive Man, also wants to defeat the Collectors, who actually have begun attacking human colonies and abducting civilians around the galaxy. The Elusive Man proposes an alliance between him and Shepard, which the previously dead Spectre reluctantly accepts. The game's plot follows Shepard as he gathers a team of experts to face the Collectors once again and put an end to their attacks. In similar fashion to the first game, the premise seems quite simple at first glance, but becomes a lot more complex as you discover the antagonists' motives and their connections to the Reapers. Additionally, your newfound friendship with Cerberus prevents the premise from feeling rehashed, and is definitely the most intriguing aspect of the story. They are not by the book good guys, or arguably even good guys at all, since they're quite infamous in the entire galaxy, and in Mass Effect you spend a good chunk of side missions clearing out the mess they have caused and unveiling a lot of inhuman experiments conducted by their scientists. In fact, if you choose the survivor background for your character, Cerberus are directly responsible for the Treasure Maw attack, which mauled your unit to death. So no one really gets off to a good start here. Your alliance with them even causes friction between you and former allies who start to become wary around you. I'm sure people expected them to play a bigger part in the second game, but becoming your tag team partner, even out of necessity, was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Although defeating the Collectors is indeed in the best interest of both sides, you never lose that feeling that Cerberus might be up to something. The Elusive Man, the leader of Cerberus, is some sort of like evil space Elon Musk, even though the regular Elon Musk is already the space Elon Musk. He's just as much of an enigma as the Collectors are, but you can easily tell that he has ulterior motives. But regardless of what you personally think of them, they're the only ones that have the resources and the willingness to help you. And also they have an exact copy of the Normandy. So swallow your pride, team up with your unlikely ally, save the galaxy, and get laid again, I guess. Your You already died once, what's the worst that can happen? Since this is a direct sequel, Mass Effect 2 offers players of the first game the chance to import their save file. This means that important choices you made in the original will be transferred to the sequel, such as who your lover is and who you saved and killed. But even if you haven't played the first game, it's not too bad, because the game will just choose default options for you. But it's actually pretty cool seeing NPCs remember you and specific things you have done. It just adds an extra layer to some conversations. Just don't expect your choices from the first one to alter the story too much. Generally, in BioWare games, many important decisions in games end up having only minor impact on the respective sequels. If there's a character that can potentially kick the bucket, either way he's guaranteed to have little to no relevance in the next installment, regardless of whether you saved him or not. While from a conceptual standpoint Mass Effect 2 introduces interesting ideas, the execution of the main story is a bit of a complicated matter here, because the main bulk of what you're doing in the game has actually not a lot to do with the collectors. In fact, the game kind of sidelines them for the most part. What you're doing instead is building up a team in order to face them. Your potential team members are handpicked by the Illusive Men, and they're spread over the galaxy for you to pick them up. Without the DLC, there are 9 potential team members, some of which have recruitment missions, but all of them have companion quests, which are called loyalty missions in the game. These missions make up most of the main story, and they're nothing short of amazing, really. They're not forced on the player, and you can skip them if you really want to, but the game heavily encourages you to complete the loyalty missions. These missions are self-contained stories, basically. For instance, in one recruitment missions you have to break out from a galactic prison, while in a different one you have to stop an alien-killing virus from spreading over a district in Omega. These missions are just loosely connected to the main story due to Shepard and his motivations to stop the collector threat, but other than that they have nothing to do with each other. As a result, Mass Effect 2 feels a lot more episodic, which is not really an issue here. This is where it gets complicated though. The issue here is that the side quests kind of overshadow the main story. You have these amazing subplots involving your companions, and they're great stuff, and I think the loyalty missions are some of the best in the franchise, but it just kind of feels weird that the main conflict is the weak link here. Don't get me wrong, the collector's missions and the abducted colonists don't make for a bad story or anything. They're quite decent actually and have their moments. The reveal about the collectors is really interesting and puts everything into a new perspective. It's just that you spend so much time with your crew and dealing with their problems, so that the actual antagonist becomes second priority, especially since the missions involving them are rare and spread too thin. The collectors are powerful enemies, and the game's intro is a testament of their strength. However, they barely do anything in the game. I mean, Saren from the first game didn't have a lot of screen time either, but he was a constant threat. You would look for clues about him and encounter his goons on every main planet. In Mass Effect 2 there are so many missions where you'll find not a single trace of the antagonists. You don't even fight them that often now that I think about it. You face the Blue Suns and Eclipse more often than the Collector troops. It feels like the Collectors are only really a threat when the game decides for it and throws it in your face. They also lack the personality that Saren had, but considering their backstory, it kind of makes sense for them to be this way, I guess. You can actually probably excuse most of it with their backstory, and maybe they're just waiting for your next move to react to it, since they are a hive mind after all. But speaking of personality, the sequel drastically improved on the writing of your squad. Each member has its own story to tell and a character arc to go through. With the help of the aforementioned recruitment and loyalty missions, the game dedicates way more time to your most important allies than the original did. Dialogue options have also been expanded upon, and you can converse with them a lot more now. The voice acting, once again, is absolutely fantastic, with even more big-time actors on board. For example, the Illusive Man is voiced by none other than Martin Sheen. For the most part, Shepard stays the same largely, and you can decide on his gender and customize Shepard's face again, but that's all. It's just like the first one basically. Same applies for morality really. It works just the same as before, however they spiced it up a little bit. Sometimes during a cutscene there's either a Paragon or Renegade prompt which you can press. Some of the prompts let Shepard do some really cool or even hilarious stuff. Romancing also returns as a prominent feature, and this time the options are more numerous and also weirder. There are 6 different partners to choose from, and only 3 are human. Out of those 3, one is a superhuman clone and another one is a tattooed psychopath with force powers. And then there's Jacob. Maybe he's so planned to offset the craziness? Overall, I think it was a bold move considering the level of controversy Liara already caused in the first one. So if you ever wondered what dating a talking dinosaur would be like, Mass Effect 2 makes the dream come true. But all jokes aside, romance has quickly become a main feature of the Mass Effect series, and the sequel doesn't disappoint on that front. And actually, Garrus's romance dialogue is one of the best in the game. In terms of world building, Mass Effect 2 does a great job at expanding on the game's established lore. While the original only gave you a vague understanding of of matters like the genophage via codex or dialogue, the sequel puts you directly into affected environments where you can see the magnitude of the issues yourself. For example, stepping foot onto Chanka and listening to all the desperate countermeasures of the Krogan race really makes you understand how severe the genophage is, especially considering it lasted for 1,000 years. The gameplay probably underwent the most drastic changes, as Mass Effect 2 is a lot more streamlined than before. As a result, some RPG elements such as loot were removed or heavily simplified. Armor is almost purely cosmetic, plus a few boni the different pieces grant, and weapons have to be acquired only once and can be equipped on multiple squad members at the same time. Level ups and the skill tree still exist, but you don't gain experience from killing mobs anymore, and rather from completing missions. The class system returns with every class from the previous game, but the amount of skills have been reduced to a minimum. You know, they took out a lot of micromanagement, and there's a lack of variety which restricts you from trying different builds throughout your different playthroughs, I guess. You kind of just pick two important skills and just level those up and then use them for the rest of the game. On one hand, the removal of RPG elements is a shame, but on the other hand, Mass Effect 2 heavily improved on level design and gameplay mechanics. The cover system also works a lot better and is actually helpful this time. Annoying tank sequences are also completely removed, and missions pretty much always skip straight forward to the fun part. There isn't really filler content that stretches out missions unnecessarily, which is kind of nice. While in our previous video we criticized the clunky gameplay that doesn't hold up anymore of the first game, Mass Effect 2 is so much more fun to play thanks to improved combat. And I guess we have to kind of talk about the final mission since the game is well known for it. So if you haven't played the game yourself yet, just skip to the time that's on the screen right now. So that's a warning. 3, 2, 1, spoiler talk. The suicide mission is the best final mission in the franchise, and for a good reason. As the name suggests, you can expect many deaths of your squad mates. Every squad mate you recruited, your regular crew, and even Shepard can potentially meet the end during this mission. Depending on how well you're prepared up to this point and your decision during the missions, you can either avoid any casualties at all or lose most of your allies. Mass Effect 2's finale manages to do what Mass Effect 3 would go on to promise and then fail at: have your decisions make an impact on the ending. While it isn't too difficult though to save all the players, and I'm sure on a second run you'll be able to save them all, if you play the game blind and you play the suicide mission for the first time, it's a really awesome experience. The final mission itself is quite fun with every squad mate being involved. It just feels like everything you've been working on comes together in the final mission. You have to prove how well you know your crew and assign the right squad mate to the right task. It really feels like everyone is depending on you to make the right calls. And we already said it's not too difficult to figure it out, but honestly I think it doesn't need to be. Honestly, graphically the game still holds up pretty well, I would say, even like 9 years later. There's slight graphical improvements compared to the first one, but I don't think if you have a story-driven RPG and you know the story is so good, you don't need like the most realistic graphics. But I still think Mass Effect 2's graphics look realistic enough, and they still hold up to this day. When it comes to extra content, Mass Effect 2's DLCs are some of the best I've seen from any game really, and I'd highly recommend checking them out if you find them on sale or included in your Mass Effect 2 edition. Because if you play the game on Xbox, for example, or an EA Access or Origin Access, you don't get the DLCs, and they'll cost like $40 to purchase. And while they're good, like really good, I don't think they're worth $40 anymore. So either wait for a sale or find the Game of the Year edition. If I had to pick one DLC to buy though, I would pick Lair of the Shadow Broker, since it's perhaps the best DLC in the franchise. And also the Revival DLC serves as a great teaser for Mass Effect 3. Oh, and also there's the Genesis DLC, which lets you alter some default choices if you haven't played the first Mass Effect. Well, to conclude this video, I think we're gonna go ahead and give Mass Effect 2 an A-. Mass Effect 2 is a phenomenal game, and I would say it's the best one in the franchise. It's definitely the peak. The gameplay still holds up, the dialogue is awesome, and the graphics don't look bad either. They removed some RPG elements, but I don't think it ruined the game at all. If for some reason you only want to play one Mass Effect game, play the second one. It is BioWare at peak performance, so go check it out for yourself. Anyways, that's it for today's video. Let us know in the comments down below if you agree with Mass Effect 2 being the best game in the franchise. Maybe you have a different opinion. Make sure to subscribe to Rockets Love and turn on notifications and like the video. We'll see you guys next time with a brand new video.